This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Kia ora, good evening. Welcome to the South Today. I'm Daryl Baser. New Zealand is in the second week of Alert Level 3 status in the fight to stop the spread of the coronavirus known as COVID-19. There was good news at this afternoon's media announcement, with the Director General of Health saying there are no new cases of COVID-19 for the first time since March the 16th.
Today we have no new cases of COVID-19 to report. One probable case already known to us has been reclassified as confirmed following a positive test in the last few days, so that is a probable case that has now become a confirmed case. It means there's no change to the overall total of confirmed and probable cases, which remains at 1,487. I'm pleased to say there are no additional deaths to report. So our total number of confirmed cases rises by one and is now 1,137, and this is the number that we continue to report to the World Health Organization. Yesterday, being a Sunday, there were a lower number of tests, 2,473 tests completed. Our combined total to date, 152,696 tests completed.
And stay tuned to Channel 39 to see today's full announcement. Following last week's shift to Alert Level 3, maintenance workers have been working to restore Dunedin's parks to a more tidy state. Many council-owned parks, gardens and sports fields couldn't be maintained during the Level 4 lockdown. Groundspeople had their work cut out for them. Mauro Pizzuto, seen here, was busy last week clearing up autumn leaves at Queen's Gardens on Thursday. With plant growth slowed down at this time of the year, mowing and gardening are normally dropped to twice a month. However, following 4 weeks of no maintenance, contractors can look forward to an increase in work to make up for lost time. The demolition of the old hillside workshops restarted last week after the project came to a halt at the beginning of lockdown. Thursday saw a large crane being used to lift roof panels off the building. It's part of KiwiRail's plan to revitalise the facilities, allowing them to maintain more locomotives and wagons and undertake new types of work. It's to become a vital part of KiwiRail's South Island operations, creating about 40 new jobs over the next 3 years. There are hopes Hillside will become a centre for engineering in the South Island, attracting complementary businesses such as manufacturing, fabrication and potentially marine engineering to the site. This year's ASB Otago Sports Awards aren't being celebrated with the usual awards night dinner at Dunedin's Town Hall. Instead, nominated finalists and winners in 10 categories will be announced in the Otago Daily Times over the next month. Tonight we bring you the nominated finalists for Junior Sportswoman of the Year. The first nominee for Otago's Junior Sportswoman of the Year is champion snowboarder Zoe Sadowski-Sinnott. Her career as an international snowboarder has been taking off in recent years as she competes on the international stage, making her a top contender for the title. Swimmer Erica Fairweather is the second competitor off the blocks in the contest. And with many Australasian successes, as well as breaking New Zealand records in the pool, have set her up for a place at this year's Tokyo Olympic Games. Back on the snow, skier Alice Robinson took out many New Zealand titles before heading to the Northern Hemisphere, where she won in Austria and Slovenia in the giant slalom. The Junior Sportswoman of the Year is set to be announced on Wednesday. In Dunedin, the South Today. In today's edition of Rugby Chat, we've got the second half of Friday's chat, with Paul Dwyer picking the brains of former Otago stalwart who's moved north.
And so where do you see, I mean it's a tough one possibly to answer, but where do you see, how does the NPC fit in now? It's effectively a glorified club competition, sponsorships getting harder and harder, the crowds aren't coming. I mean, there's obviously still got to be a place, but you've got kids that are aspirational playing rugby that want to play for their club and then go on to play for their province and then hopefully get picked for a Super 15 team if they're good enough. But I mean, where do you see that whole NPC thing sitting now? We squeeze it into 10 weeks at the end of the year. We're probably paying far too much money to make it happen. So what's the answer to this?
I don't think there's one answer, Paul. One of the moves that was made in the last probably 6 to 12 months, which was getting New Zealand Rugby getting a lot closer to the secondary schools of New Zealand. They were probably out on a limb a bit. And as a result of that, control is probably the wrong word, but liaison between secondary schools and the rugby unions and New Zealand Rugby was fragmented, and we lost a lot of those good players to rugby league and even, Otago boys, Southland boys, Kings, different schools down there, St Kevin's. Those schools used to generate a lot of good players for the province, but we lose a lot to other league or to other provinces. So if we can now get closer to the secondary schools, have a pathway for them, they need to get in and play club rugby, then perhaps Mitre 10 Cup, and then go into professional rugby and get part of that academy. So I think there are a number of bits to this jigsaw that should be able to help, but it's there's no magic wand for any part of the game. But if we can sort of get the sum of the parts working together, it won't do us any harm, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know that we're looking at, as a group of clubs in Dunedin, we are looking to get back into that recruitment space of the 5-year-olds upwards, and the group of club chairmen I'm dealing with are really, really keen to get out, go back to grassroots in a lot of ways with our unions and get our player development people back into schools, running programs at a primary school level. I think we seem to be missing that in New Zealand now. From your experience, the more we can do at that early school level, certainly it's got to help us generate more players.
Absolutely, Paul. And you talked about numbers, and the women's game has really generated big numbers for New Zealand Rugby, and it's a really great innovation. It's a tough gig, the women's rugby currently, because it's not commercially viable, but it will be, and it's a game that's being invested in for the future. We've got the Rugby World Cup for women here next year, so that'll generate a lot of interest. So, and I think if we can continue to keep kids, the young ones, both men and boys and girls, playing through, it seems to be easy enough at that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We seem to lose them probably starting into secondary school. Part of the reason that the roller mills and different, these different kids competitions have been taken away, which I know caused a lot of angst, was a lot of kids just gave up playing rugby then if they didn't make that team. And was it the parents actually that made them give up because they told them they were better than what they were? So if we can just level it a bit rather than having the haves and the have-nots in terms of rugby players, then you'll get more of your Ali Williams and Tony Woodcocks and different guys that come through, Joe Moody, that come through later in their career as opposed to coming through from, the under 13 team.
Right, mate. So let's go on to, there's a lot of things I want to cover, but let's talk about Super 15 this year. There's been a lot of talk, and I'm looking at what's happening in Australia at the moment, and that guy Vlandis, to me, seems to be a very impressive chairman for the NRL, and he was, I think he single-handedly turned racing around in Australia, and he's kicking off as new competition come hell or high water on the 28th of May. Super 15, like I'm hearing promising murmuring, but what are you hearing? Are we going to get underway at some stage in June?
I suppose it comes back to when we're allowed to do these sorts of things. So we're at the behest of wee bit of the government, which is a challenge for someone like myself as well. It's in both small businesses and involved in. We'll talk about
that shortly, Peter. I've noticed you're wearing a Scapegrace T-shirt today, Peter. Obviously, you're involved in Scapegrace. And how are they going? I've seen some stuff from Scapegrace. Scapegrace, if you don't know, is the gin company on the rise in New Zealand. So, mate, I'm hearing they're doing some massive numbers online at the moment.
Yeah, things are going very well for Scapegrace, and we do have a lot of loyal supporters in the Highlanders region down there and shareholders. So, yep. So, and Scapegrace is one that will come through this stronger. We're setting up a distillery up near Cromwell by chance, just near where I've got a place.
Nothing to do with the fact that you're the chairman of Scapegrace Peter, that it's going in Cromwell?
It could have had an influence, Paul, could have had an influence. But back to your question, it is linked, though, to business and to rugby, and rugby being a contact sport, of course, it even makes it more challenging in the COVID, the social distancing and everything. I know that New Zealand rugby is ready to go as soon as they're allowed to. As you say, the NRL have been more bullish in Australia, but it remains to be seen whether that will get off the ground. But yep, Blandies has certainly put his neck out. But I know that rugby in New Zealand is ready to go as soon as we're allowed to. So it will be, from my understanding, and well, you don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to work it out, that it will be a New Zealand-based competition because the borders, we don't know when they'll be open. The Australia-New Zealand border could open pre-Christmas from what I'm hearing, but no one's putting money on that. So I think Super Rugby for the balance of this year, if they're allowed to get underway, will certainly be between the 5 Super Rugby teams that are in New Zealand and round robin.
So, mate, look, I've heard a bit of, and I'm a wee bit disappointed, to be fair. I've heard a couple of CEOs come out, I think, namely from the Blues and the Hurricanes over the last few days, potentially putting the boot into their own competition, which I thought was a wee bit strange. And sure, there's always been issues with Super Rugby, but I would have thought they would have been trying to get behind it rather than saying that we need to totally change the competition. Is that a wee bit rash from those guys coming out and saying that at this early stage?
I didn't hear the comments, Paul, but I guess the old saying is never waste a good crisis. So perhaps, I don't know whether they're thinking, should we make it more localised? Should it be a Trans-Tasman? I don't know where they're coming from. I heard Aaron Smith interviewed recently, and he was saying how he really enjoys playing against the Argentinian teams, the Japanese teams and the South African teams. But maybe they're being realistic and saying, can this, in terms of travel, in terms of the way the world's changed, can our competition continue to be the same? And innovation's a great, these times are a great opportunity for innovation. So if that means there's a different Super Rugby competition, then so be it.
Okay, mate. I'm just touching back on that whole board thing. So, just again from a parochial South Islander, do we have, what have we on the board now? Have we got any South Island representation at all on the board now?
There is one from Canterbury.
Right. So therefore, there'll be no representation south of Ashburton. Then is that what we're saying?
That is my understanding.
Okay, let's talk about some of the things that have happened over the last couple of years, and you were on the rugby committee. The appointment of Fozzie to come in as the All Black coach, and we obviously had Scott Robertson and we had Jamie Joseph at one stage before he came out and said, "No, I'm going to stay with Japan," and because of what happened at the World Cup. So, mate, what's your take on Fozzie as the coach? And was Robertson unlucky? Was Jamie unlucky? What's your sort of feeling on that?
There was a lot of debate about the process because we came out and said that there would be 26 people were going to be spoken to, but clearly 26 people weren't going to be the All Black coach. But what happens when this process happens in terms of interviewing? Coaches don't just come on their own. They have a team with them. They don't necessarily come to the interview, but they have a team on paper that they've got ready to go if they get the role. So probably part of that 26 being tapped on the shoulder could have been where the likes of Greg Feek, John Plumtree and Brad Moore came through to support Fozzie, because a lot did change pre and post the World Cup. As you say, I think Jamie was tied up with Fozzie and different names were tied up with different people, but I think Jamie was made an offer he couldn't refuse, and I tried hard to get him to get involved with the All Blacks, but he's made the right decision and I support that decision. I also support the decision for Fozzie to be the All Black coach. He's got a very good team behind him. Scott Robertson's an outstanding coach as well. His time will come. I just think Ian Foster was the right person through the process to take the role for another 2 years, and hopefully he does enough to take it for another 2 years towards the World Cup.
Right, mate, just to finish on the rugby side, in terms of you, you're based in Cromwell, you've split your time between Cromwell and Auckland, and obviously you're a keen supporter of the Cromwell Rugby Club. I don't know if you actually played that well for Cromwell when you played, Peter, but you were a menacing prop at one stage and then transformed yourself into a midfield back that never made a tackle. But that's obviously really important to you. Obviously the Sharks and Dunedin are important to you as well because you played a lot of rugby there as well. So, mate, are you still going to be involved with grassroots rugby?
We actually won a competition 1 year I played in Cromwell, Paul, so we didn't do too bad. But we also had a lot of fun up there. We had those were the days when there were 2 teams, and then it was tough to get a team. And then, latterly, Cromwell's back to 2 teams again because there was a big push of population up towards Cromwell, Arrowtown, Queen.
That might change.
But who knows? I'd love to get involved in helping club rugby when I can, Paul. I think you know that I've always tried to support in different ways I can in that area. It's always been dear to my heart because that's where it all starts and often that's where it all finishes. And I did also spend a bit of time buddying when I was spending more time up north, initially on the board, buddying the likes of King Country and catching up with Colin Meads and Wairarapa with Brian Lahore and getting told after a few pints that what should be happening in Heartland. So I was never allowed to escape that. I felt I had a bit of a need to listen to those guys and try.
It's a bit scary. It's pretty hard to say no to the 2 sirs, let's be honest.
And then just for old time's sake, they'd throw in Stan Meads on one side and quite often the Scarf Earl Curtin would turn up too. So it was quite hard case as well.
Right, mate. So let's talk about. And during lockdown, you're still heavily involved in the hospitality industry in New Zealand. You've got your son Patrick running a couple of bar restaurants up there. You're involved in the Ale House in Christchurch. Obviously, we talked about Scapegrace, and I think you're still involved in a brewery in Australia. So, how do you think things? It's got to be tough, and we're getting some businesses back up and running, serving coffee out the window and doing takeaway meals, but it's sort of piecemeal stuff. How is the hospitality industry faring and how are you going to come out?
The hospitality industry and tourism have probably been hardest hit because we had no say in what happened. So when someone just comes along and says you've got to shut the doors, but you have to pay everything that you'd normally pay while you're operating, it's quite an unusual stage in business and in life and in the way a government behaves. Understanding that, this is unusual times, but hospitality will always be there, but it's just going to be a lot tougher and unfortunately there'll be a lot that won't survive. We're taking it, looking at a long-term view for our outlets. Lucky enough to have some good, as you say, good operators in Patrick and also Gremlin down south, but also some good shareholders who we're there for the long term. So hopefully we'll come through it, Paul, but I do feel sorry for some of the ones that are in hospitality that are very good at it, but just maybe cash strapped and it's tough. Tourism's tough, but tourism will come again. But I think we've got to be positive, but it's just really, it's something that no one can really plan for. A pandemic where you just get your doors shut and basically the keys thrown away until someone gives them back to you.
Right, mate. And there's one thing I didn't touch on, which I think perhaps it's a hot topic at the moment. Is this whole Augustine Pichot versus Bill Beaumont and World Rugby. I know you've been close to this because you've done quite a bit with both of those guys over the last few years. So where do you see that going? And from New Zealand's point of view, who do you think should actually be the head honcho?
Yeah, I can understand New Zealand have come out and supported Gus Pichot, the feisty Argentinian halfback, he's up for change, so that's the platform he's standing on. Bill Beaumont, I do know Bill well. I went up to a Six Nations game and up in the UK and Ireland towards the end of January, early February, and caught up with Bill for a couple of hours. And he's standing on the platform. I guess he's got Bernard Laporte, who's his deputy, who's a well-known ex-French player. Now, between England and France, they have 70% of the revenue of World Rugby just right there. So I'm wondering whether or not Bernard Laporte could be the one that makes the decision. People might look at that and say, if we can get French rugby, club rugby, to fall into line a bit more, and if it means getting France into the tent rather than outside it, then that would help a lot with professional rugby and with international rugby and all that sort of thing. So I can understand why New Zealand have supported the Southern Hemisphere. But I do hope that we have kept on good terms with the Northern Hemisphere as well, because if Bill gets in with Bernard, it's far better for us to be on side there. World Rugby needs New Zealand rugby, but we need to have a good relationship. It needs to be collaborative, not combative. And I just hope whoever gets in, that it's for the betterment of rugby and for the future of rugby at all levels, and not just self-serving for the particular area, which, I'm pretty sure it won't be going into the future.
Is there another instalment for Peter Keane and rugby, or have you done with that and you just want to get the hospitality industry back up and running?
I've got my priorities currently are for the businesses and the boards I'm on, but you never say never to anything, Paul. But at this stage, I'm not out there throwing my CV around. But I have had a few rings from quite a few people, which has been very nice. But I think I'll just take a deep breath and see how things go.
Right, mate, Keno, look, good to catch up. Go well in Auckland. I hope you can get those the corner bar back up and running in Auckland, because I did the last time I was in Auckland. I just said to the taxi driver, can you take me to the only bar in Auckland that's open, please? And the little Indian man was very confused, but he finally worked out it was the corner bar, because I was of the opinion there used to be a lot of bars in Auckland, but that seems to be the only one that's there when I go. But mate, you have a good few days, and hopefully you'll be back behind the bar with your son in the next couple of weeks.
Thanks, Paul. All the best to Otago South and North Otago and the Highlanders for the future, and for Dunedin Rugby Club.
Thank you, sir. And that's it for ODT Rugby Chat, sponsored by Garrett Orr this week, and we'll be back with you again soon.
Time now for a look at the weather.
Tonight's weather proudly brought to you by Mole Map.
Beginning with the situation, a wintry Tuesday lies ahead with inland snow on the hills tonight, with sleety hail showers across the Otago coast. In the southern towns, the double-digit high temperatures are well and truly gone, with the Catlins, Balclutha, Lumsden and Gore all due for strong southwesterlies, showers and 7-degree highs. Heading across to the Central Lakes, single-digit highs here as well, with gusty southwesterlies for you all. Wanaka, Queenstown and Te Anau are all aiming for 7 degrees, while it's a bit warmer in Alexandra, expecting 8 degrees. To the northern towns, strong southwesterlies and showers are the order of the day here as well. Timaru is the only place likely to reach double figures, with a 10-degree high predicted, while Oamaru heads for 9, with Twizel and Omarama in line for 6 degrees. In Dunedin, it'll be cold tonight, with gusty southwesterlies and an overnight low of just 6 degrees. Often cloudy tomorrow with frequent wintry showers, some hail likely and sleet possible. Expect a high of 8 and a low of 4. It'll still be cold on Wednesday with sunny periods and some cloud, with southwesterly winds dying out, a high of 13 and a low of 7 degrees. And heading to Invercargill, wintry showers and strong southwesterlies are set to be here as well, with an overnight low of 6 degrees. Hail showers begin your Tuesday, but it clears slowly tomorrow, with sunny periods increasing from mid-afternoon. You're looking at a high of 9 degrees and a low of 5. It should be fine in Invercargill on Wednesday, with sunny periods and some cloud. Cold with moderate southwesterlies, you can expect a high of 13 and a low of 7. And that's all from the South Today team for this Monday. For the latest news from the southern region, head online to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on Facebook and YouTube. And stay tuned to Channel 39 for the latest COVID-19 updates from the government. Have a great evening. Remember your social distancing. And for all you Star Wars fans, may the 4th be with you. Ka kite a popo. See you tomorrow.
This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.